I love that little anecdote by Kurt Vonnegut. The whole thing is just a couple paragraphs long, and I'll link it below. There's a few of you that really should read that. Anyways, on this weekend, we had decided to go down to the Bailey's Trail System, which is in Athens County, southern Ohio, in the Wayne National Forest. It's the foothills of the Appalachians. It's very near the city of Athens, Ohio, which is the home of Ohio University. And Aaron and I stopped there on our way down to go to the farmer's market so we could pick up some stuff to grill and snacks for later. We also grabbed some hard cider from a local cider maker, so we'd have something to drink later too. We were staying in a cabin called Benton on the Baileys. There's also Bailey's Base Camp right here, so there's primitive camping, another cabin at the bottom of the hill that this gravel road I'm riding down is on. Our cabin is kind of in the middle. So other stuff around here, a shower house and all that kind of thing. I'll get into that a little more later. But when we got there and got set up, me, Aaron, and Dylan pretty much got our bikes ready and we're heading out. It's maybe a half mile up this gravel road climb to get to the trails that we were going to be riding first, and then we were off onto the trails. The Baileys is interesting. There are 58 miles of a planned 88 miles of trails that are already built. Most of it is this machine-built, fast and flowy stuff, so an absolute blast to ride, my favorite kind of thing to ride. And pretty much everybody this weekend would be riding rigids, except for Erin, who had front suspension fork on her Salsa Timberjack. These trails are actually perfectly fine for full rigid. There are some rock sections, but it's mostly just to keep muddy sections from getting really bad. And there are some rock gardens on the more advanced trails, but nothing too crazy. Get into that a little more later too. So full rigid, fully acceptable. You could even get away with gravel biking some of this if you have wide enough gravel tires. But yeah, front suspension bike, a hardtail, that is probably the perfect thing. I think full suspension would probably be a bit overkill, but these are the kind of trails that are so great because you could have fun no matter what you ride. The trails here started opening in 2017 with the first phase. I think there's 3 phases, all built by different trail builders. Dylan has been riding them since the beginning, so he knows them like the back of his hand. So it's awesome. We're just able to kind of follow him, and he could put together a loop that is kind of what we're looking for a specific ride. And so that's why you'll see when we're catching up to him at like a fork in the road, that's how we kind of are all able to have fun, even though we're all different skill levels. It's just everyone rides their ride, and then when it comes to a place where there's a decision that needs to be made, or you need that quick break to drink your water, because when you're mountain biking, a lot harder to grab your water bottle out of the bottle cage or eat a snack, we kind of then regroup at that point and then move on again. If you come to the Baileys, you definitely want to have a plan if you're not riding with someone who knows the system. Since it's just kind of loops that build on loops, it would be really easy to get yourself in trouble. And I don't mean this in a way that you would get hurt or you would get completely lost, just that you could end up too far away and have a lot of work to get back. If you're not a really super experienced mountain biker, these trails still will really take it out of you. We did 20 miles on this ride and then 26 miles on the ride the next morning. This one was 1,800 feet for the 20 miles, and the next one was 2,600 feet for about the 25 miles. So there's no real long sustained climbs, but it's a constant, up and down and flowy type stuff. And if you're just not a mountain biker, like I'm not, like those 2 rides took it out of me more than, almost equal to doing near a century ride on the road without a ton of climbs would. So having said all that, this is a good point to throw it back to the beginning of the video and that quote I had up. Being that this is a mountain bike video, serious mountain bikers will sometimes find these that aren't necessarily my regular viewers. And so here's the thing, this is the mantra of my channel. I just love to ride bikes, and I ride bikes all the time. I ride thousands of miles a year. I love pretty much every discipline in cycling. I'm not the best at any of them. I'm not a great mountain biker. I'm not a great gravel racer, and I'm not a great road rider, but I love doing all those things. So that's what this channel is about. So I don't, you don't need to be like, oh, your bike is blah, 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 or all your tire size is whatever. This is a channel about riding bikes for people who love to ride bikes and want to just be able to try different things. There are plenty of videos of guys out here on their perfect mountain bike that will just absolutely crush and blow away these trails and could act tough, and that they killed it all. They rode all 58 miles in record time, and those videos might be ones that are more suited to what you want to see. So this is my second time out here at the Baileys. On this first day, we did most of the stuff that I had done before, kind of heading from where we were camping towards the Chauncey trailhead. It really was an absolute blast this time too, because the first time we had been bike packing, so I rode a lot of the trails with this bike loaded down. So just to be able to go out without any miles in my legs and a lighter bike made it a lot of fun. I mean, the bike packing trip was great that we put together, and I'll make that the linked video. at the end screen, so if you want to see how we put together a full bike packing trip out here, you could see that as well. One more thing on the mapping, as you can see, we're waiting up here for Dylan to show us where to go again. Bailey's recommends Trailforks to use as a mapping app. You know, all the other ones do work, but Trailforks is the one that they specifically control and isn't controlled from the outside like Google Maps or user generated like some of the other content you'll find about mapping your routes out here. There were a couple trees down from the hurricane. Most of the stuff had been clear, so it was still almost all great and rideable. This was one of the rare trees, but do be careful of that if you're going, you know, as I'm making this in fall of 2024. The other thing to note out here is all the trails except the 3 downhill ones are bi-directional, so you do need to pay a little bit of attention. Most of the turns aren't too blind or anything like that, and when we passed any other cyclist, we've never had an issue. We tend to be the ones to yield when we see someone coming, so something to keep in mind. Next up, we were getting to the point where you take these little more gravelly, flatter trails to the Chauncey Trailhead. We rode out there. There's a pump track out there. There's a picnic pavilion you can reserve, and there's bathrooms. The thing is, there is no water, which is just so wild. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of reason for the millions of dollars that have invested in this place. It seems a little bit weird, but keep that in mind as you head out on the trails, that you need to be prepared to have all the supplies you'll want. Chauncey is real close. I mean, I think we're actually within the city limits here on these pump tracks. So we rode to the gas station. There's not a ton in Chauncey, but there's a gas station. I did see another convenience store. So we went in there to refill on water after we spent a little bit of time enjoying the pump track. Aaron's first time ever riding a pump track. You can use this gravel road here, or gravel, whatever it is, to get into Chauncey. As mentioned, my Stravas are always linked below, so if you want to see where we rode on any of this, do that. We also took this on day 2 to get to Athens. I'll show that later, but there is a route to get into town and get to the bike path without hitting any of the main roads, if you're willing to be a little adventurous. Rewatching this footage as I make this voiceover just reminds me of how much I love these trails. They're just so fun to ride. So heading more directly back was because we were going to meet up with our buddy Micah. He was coming into town after he had to do some stuff on Saturday about 4 o'clock. So again, it's this gravel road and then the climb up to the cabin where we were staying. Dylan and Micah headed out to do about 20 miles of single track. Dylan, being 10 times the mountain biker I am, he had the energy to do it again. Micah had fresh legs. So I felt like that would be great to let those two go ride together. Micah had never been here before. Both those two were single speeding also. Aaron and I decided to drive to Little Fish Brewing, which is on the edge of Athens, and get some beers and dinner. We had been there when this place first opened and really, really liked it. Original plan was to ride into Athens, but we were both reasonably spent, so we decided, hey, let's just drive there. It's only 15 minutes from where we're staying. Day 2, our buddy Albert drove down in the morning and joined us. So in the morning, Albert, Dylan, Micah, and I headed out on the trails. Aaron decided to head over to Stroud's and do a good hike, which is closer to Athens and again would be in my bike packing video that I told you I would share at the end of this. As you can see, it's just an absolutely glorious fall day. Beautiful, beautiful outside. Got really warm, actually, warmer than you would expect for fall, but still can't complain. Early October in Ohio, this was pretty rad. One thing that you'll note is you can see that one's not as bad, but there are certain dips where it kind of would probably be drainage when it runs. Some of those have the rocks in there. That's something I'm not as good as navigating, but did a little bit better on this trip. Also, you can see there are some beelines and some little jumps if you want to hit those. And on this day, we were working our way over to some of the stuff I hadn't done before. I wanted to try one of the downhill runs. We also did a trail show here momentarily that is different than most of the other trails at Bailey's. I think it's the only one like it where it's much more old school. Looks like it's hand-built. You'll see that there's leaves all over the trail, so definitely a totally different vibe than these fast, flowy, machine-built trails that just are my favorite. Speaking of the leaves, though, you do have to be a little bit careful, even though it's super dry. It's actually drought conditions out here right now. We weren't allowed to have a fire or anything at the cabin, unfortunately, but obviously that makes total sense, and it's not on the cabin owners. It's on the Wayne National Forest to make those calls. You do need to be a little careful in leafy sections. I think everybody except Aaron went down at some point on this trip. No one really got hurt. Micah did slide into some briars. AJ slipped down the side of one of the hills. My falls were actually both really, really soft, where it's kind of where you're able to walk away from the bike. It was just letting my front wheel get away from me. This was one of those sections where you just get so much speed, and with the humps, you could get unintentional air, as I've heard Ben call it before. So I actually had to pump the brakes a little bit because I did not want that. Here's another one, a little drop off. You could see it coming with plenty of time, like pretty much everything at the Bailey's. So you're never going to come up to something that's going to put you in danger. That's one where I said out loud as soon as I got there, oh, I totally could have rode over that, but I just didn't know what it was going to look like. Here's that more hand-cut trail I was talking about. You could see people probably ride it a little less as it's so leaf-covered, but it's one of those where it's more of a slow-going technical challenge, but a good change of pace when almost the other, I don't know, what is this, a couple miles, and so 56 other miles of flowy trails.
Oh, no.
Right there, it's steeper than it looks, and I was trying to do the little, as Otis from Dirty River calls them, feet of fury, where you're pedaling in the easy gear to get over the little bump, and there's a root at the top. Well, I lost my steam and rode off the side of the trail, unfortunately. Here's one of my slow motion falls coming up, which was just turned my front tire just a little bit too much, but at a super slow speed, and just kind of slipped off my bicycle. Sharp turns are one of my weakest things in mountain biking that I definitely need to get better at. And some of the berms that they have built, the leaves have accumulated in the bottom, and it's like where I'm like, I need to carry enough speed to be around the top, which is where you kind of should be anyways, or more in the middle, I guess. But, that's practice. Just need to do it more to get better at it. This section here, we jumped out on the gravel roads to kind of transfer over to the climb that would take us to the downhill trails. Dylan said there are a couple short, steep ways to get up there. We opted for what he said was the more meandering route, so a bit of longer time-wise of a climb, but less steep. So, that just made a little bit more sense for how we were all feeling. But this is the cuts of doing the downhill trail. He said that this is the easiest of the three. He said there's a huge bank turn on one of them that he even needs to walk. And Micah and Dylan had done, I think, the third one the night before, and said that there was a couple little rocky things that they definitely slowed down and took their time over. Here you can see there is a little bit of rock gardens type stuff, but still totally manageable on a rigid bike for someone of my skill level, so not bad. I really enjoyed this. Downhill, it was about my speed, and if I did it a couple times, I'd be pretty good at it. We had stopped there because Dylan was warning us about this part right here, which again with a wide-angle lens looks like nothing, but is really off camber and rooty. And then if you did hit it without expecting it, it might not be the best. When we did get down to the bottom of this downhill section, Dylan said we have a couple options. We could climb back up and do another one of the downhills. We could take one of the steeper things back up and do another one of the downhills, or we could just climb back up once and then head along the, believe it's the Nebo Trail, which would connect back in the direction towards where our cabins were. We all opted like that. We were pretty far away to get to this part from where we were riding, and I think everybody was calculating that we'd be a little tired. It was the right choice because at the time, making that climb for a third time wouldn't have been that horrible. But then as we got later in the day, I would have been pretty spent. And I think Albert and Micah agreed that that would have been the case as well. As I was getting a little more tired towards the end of this ride, I was on some of the little kind of just up and down type stuff. I was like, am I still having fun? And then we would hit a completely redeeming, absolute blast section of trail. I definitely don't capture it all on here. If you guys follow my stuff, you know that I hand hold my GoPro or use a mouth mount. So there's just times where all of a sudden we get into something really fast and flowy and that's really fun and I wish I was filming it, but I can't take my hands off the bars and I didn't have the GoPro set up. That's just the way I do it. That's why so many mountain bikers wear chesties, mount the GoPro to their chest so they could just turn it on when they want to or they just let it run. Since I don't do a ton of mountain biking, I just always forget to do that. I do have one of those that Pudgy Pedal Pusher gave me. I need to remember to bring it when we're doing mountain biking. But today was a hot day, so I'm not sure I would have wanted to wear it anyways. But there's tons of videos out there about the Baileys too if you want to see more. And people post the full run videos if you really want to get an idea of what it looks like. I love the choose your own adventure nature of the Baileys though, how there's just so much and you could just really put together routes. We actually really chilled out for a while after this, just hanging out. Some of us had a beer. We ended up making brats and everyone doing kind of a, between lunch and dinner. And then Micah and Albert were taking off. They were heading home on Sunday evening. Dylan, Aaron, and I decided to do that ride into Athens I mentioned. So you have a couple options. You can take the single track, the section we did on the first day, down to the Chauncey Trailhead. We ended up taking the main road, this gravel road out to that trailhead area. And then you'll see, and again, Strava's linked below, that we jumped on that gravel and headed over to the bike path. The thing that's really cool is right here off to the right, there's a little bit of bike path, and eventually that's going to connect all the way through to the existing one. So you won't need to go on the roads at all, and you won't need to do this little adventure down the gravel road and over a train bridge that we go over. So you can see a little bit of railroad gravel and then walking a train bridge. I believe these are active tracks, so obviously you need to do this with caution. You can see they do look silver there. So, people get mad at me for this kind of thing. Don't do it if you don't want to do it. We pay attention and do our best. So down tree that takes you over to this little cut to the trail. So again, if you're going to do this route, check out the Strava. This would be very easy to miss if you had never done it before. This is the Hockhocking Adena Bikeway. Aaron and I rode this years ago when we used to just do day trips on Bike Pass. So we parked in Nelsonville, rode all the way to Athens along this segment, went to Jackie O's, that famous brewery, went to Little Fish that I showed earlier. So this was a cool way to get into Athens, a great ride. And it's another thing too, say it got really rainy and you couldn't ride the mountain bike trails, you would have this option. There's also gravel road options you could make something out of if you had gone to Bailey's and got a lot of rain. Speaking of rain and trail conditions, the Baileys, everything is managed by the Wayne National Forest. So if the trails are going to be closed, there's not really a lot of authority there that's going to do that like with some other bike systems, but they just basically, the common sense thing. Also, the trails close in January. They do not leave them open throughout the winter. That's the Wayne National Forest choice as well. Sometimes there are prescribed burns, and sometimes you need to be conscious of hunting season. So check out the Bailey's website. It has links to everything you would need to know. So Athens is a really pretty college town. It sits kind of on this hill, so the downtown is climby. There's steep climbs to get up there. There's steep climbs in town, so keep that in mind. But if you're out here mountain biking, probably not a big deal after those days out. We went to a restaurant called Casa Nueva. Really good restaurant if you have anyone vegan or vegetarian in the group, because there are lots of options. It's not just the typical, you have to get chips and salsa or a pile of black beans type thing. So something to keep in mind. And then it was a nighttime ride back to the cabin. On our nighttime ride back out on the trail, it was absolutely a beautiful sunset and twilight. You could see the crescent moon up there. It didn't really strike me at the moment why the sky was getting so dramatic, but as we got on the trail a little farther down, I did start to notice some flashing, and I'm like, is that lightning? I was like, nah, it can't be. I must just be seeing things. But then as we did get closer to home, we started to hear the thunder, and I was like, oh no, I really don't want to get caught out here in the rain. Well, as we were doing the gravel climb back up to the cabin, that's when it really let loose. So we really only got a tiny bit damp. It's one of those things where you think to yourself, man, if we would have just spent a little longer, we would have got completely soaked. So anyways, we had planned maybe to ride a little bit on Monday morning, either here again at the Baileys or driving over to Lake Hope and checking out that other nearby trail system. But Erin actually had a screw in her tire and was losing PSI every day, so we decided we should probably just hit the road back. She didn't want to drive on the freeways with that. We stopped in that town, which is Gloucester, and got some coffee at Dirty Girl Coffee, and then we took a non-freeway route home. We did stop a number of times to put more pressure in Erin's tire. Yes, we could have just changed it at the cabin, and maybe that would have been a better solution, but we didn't. And we made it home safe and sound anyways. So definitely check out the Bailey's Trail System. I think it's kind of, I don't know if you would say hidden gem or a little less known than I think it should be for 58 miles of trail. You know, most of the trails around here are 12 or 13 miles, so just really awesome. Anyways, thanks for watching. As always, give this video that thumbs up. If you want to support us some more, we do have channel memberships available below. Thanks. Peace.